Friends and co-workers described them as curious men, not reckless, not unstable. Nothing in their daily lives suggested they were heading toward something fatal. They had a small workshop where they attempted to build devices to communicate with spirits, blending their technical skills with their esoteric beliefs. On August 17, 1966, Manuel and Miguel told their families they were leaving for a short trip. The reason they gave was simple and believable. They needed to travel to Niterói to buy electronic supplies for their workshop. They boarded a bus and began their journey, carrying with them a sum of money equivalent to about $2,000 today. Later, witnesses would recall seeing them in a local shop, but they weren't buying electronic components. They were buying raincoats and a single bottle of water. They seemed calm, almost serene, as if everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The hours ticked by. The next day their families began to worry. Then days passed, and the worry turned to panic. Back on a hill called Morro do Vintém, a local boy flying a kite made a horrifying discovery. He stumbled upon two bodies lying perfectly arranged on a bed of leaves. Police were called to the scene. What they found was stranger than anyone could have imagined. The bodies were those of Manuel and Miguel. They were lying on their backs, side by side. Each was dressed in a formal suit and a raincoat, despite the warm, dry weather, and covering their faces were two bizarre, handmade lead masks roughly cut, with simple holes for the eyes. There was no blood, no signs of a fight or any kind of struggle. It was as if they had simply lain down and died. Nearby, investigators found a small, damp notebook. Inside, written in neat handwriting, were a series of cryptic instructions. The notes read 1630B at the agreed place, 1830 swallow capsules, and then, a final, chilling line, after effect protect metals weight for signal mask. The capsules mentioned in the note were never found. The bottle of water was empty, but tests showed no traces of poison. An autopsy was performed, but the bodies were too decomposed to determine a definitive cause of death. There were no internal injuries, no signs of poisoning that could be detected. Investigators were stumped. There were no footprints from a third party. Robbery wasn't the motive, as the men still had a significant amount of cash on them. The scene was clean. It was just two men, two masks, and a set of instructions that led absolutely nowhere. The entire country was gripped by this story. What kind of signal were they waiting for? What were the capsules meant to do? And why the lead masks? The questions began to pile up, and with each passing day, the mystery only deepened. The theories that emerged were as strange as the case itself. One of the most prominent suggests this was a scientific experiment gone terribly wrong. Manuel and Miguel, with their background in electronics, might have been attempting to witness a phenomenon they believed would emit dangerous radiation or an intensely bright light. In their minds, the crude lead masks would have been their only protection. But if that's the case, where was the device? No equipment, no machine, nothing was ever found on or near the hill. It was as if the central piece of the puzzle had simply vanished. Another theory dives deep into the world of spiritualism and the occult. Both men were known members of a local spiritualist group. They were fascinated by the idea of contacting higher intelligences or extraterrestrial beings. The signal mentioned in the notebook fuels this speculation. Perhaps they believed that by following a specific rituals, swallowing the capsules and wearing the masks, they would be transported to another dimension or make contact with visitors from another world. In this scenario, the capsules could have been a hallucinogenic substance, meant to open their minds to the experience. The suits and raincoats could have been their uniform for this transcendental journey. Then there's a darker, more sinister possibility: murder. Perhaps Manuel and Miguel were not alone on that hill. Some believe they were lured there by a third party, someone they trusted who promised to guide them through a spiritual encounter. This person could have given them poison disguised as capsules for the journey and then, after they died, taken the evidence and disappeared. This would explain the missing capsules, but it doesn't explain the lack of a struggle or why an accomplice would leave the money behind. And finally, there is the most unsettling theory of all, that the men acted alone and fully believed they would survive whatever came next. They followed their own instructions, took the capsules, and lay down to await the signal, convinced they were about to witness something incredible, but their calculations were wrong. The capsules, whatever they were lethal. In this version of events, their deaths were a tragic accident, the result of a fatal misjudgment born from an obsessive quest for knowledge. If so, why choose such a public hilltop? And why has no similar experiment or belief system ever surfaced to explain their actions? Decades have passed, but the lead masks case remains an open wound in the history of Brazilian crime. Two men climbed a hill, believing they were protected, believing they were prepared, believing they would return. Instead, they became symbols of a mystery that refuses to die. The lead masks were meant to shield them from something unseen. But in the end, they only shielded the truth from the rest of us. And on Morro de Vintém, the question still lingers in the air, a silent echo of that day in 1966. What signal were they waiting for, and did it ever come? Thanks for watching. If you found this mystery as fascinating as I did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown.